Welcome back to my channel, where today I present to you a prompt for an AI video creator to make a scary video about a haunted house. This is called There Are Ghosts in Our House, so let's jump right into it. The idea came from a website where people share their own ghost stories, and this one was submitted by someone called Brad. "I just felt a cold spot in here," she said, shaking her head as if to clear it. "Never mind." Later that evening, while we were having dinner, she mentioned it again. "There's definitely something weird about this place." Then she stopped. "Where's my wedding ring?" My wife took off her engagement ring and placed it on the table. He was also curious to see the house. He showed us an old photograph of his family standing in front of the house. In the picture, my wife's grandmother was wearing the exact same wedding ring that my wife lost. "I don't want to stay in this house," my wife whispered to me that night. If our daughter truly believed that there were children living in our house, then we needed to prove to her that there weren't. "Mommy, Daddy, come see what the boy in the closet is doing," she shouted. "He's making funny faces at me." My wife and I looked at each other. Then we went to our daughter's room together. "Show us what he's doing," I told her. I pushed the blanket over the cord so our daughter wouldn't trip on it. Then I tucked her in. "Don't talk to any strange children tonight, okay?" I said. She nodded her head. We were too afraid to go check, so we just waited. To our horror, we saw the same shadowy figure from before. This time, however, it was clear that there were two figures. They were standing at the foot of the bed, staring directly at the camera. My wife screamed. Then the knocking came again. This time it was extremely loud. Then it stopped. Then we saw two shadowy figures standing at the foot of the bed. They were tall and thin and seemed to be made out of smoke. The camera couldn't quite pick out their features, but they appeared to be male. They stood there for a moment, then they began to walk around the room. They moved like apparitions, floating effortlessly through the air. They seemed to be observing us. My wife and I huddled together in the corner of the room, paralyzed with fear. Then the figures began to approach us. They floated closer and closer until they were right in front of us. They stared at us for a moment, then they vanished. We waited a few moments, but there was no more sound. Instead, we packed up our things and left the house. Now, whenever I close my eyes, I can still see those two figures standing at the foot of my bed. Sometimes I hear footsteps in the hallway and the whisper, "Come play with me," always closer than before. The last thing I heard was a voice like fingernails scratching down a chalkboard. It whispered, "You shouldn't have stayed." Then there was silence. No one has heard from us since. "Okay, Daddy." I kissed her on the forehead and left the room. She walked over to the closet and opened the door. It was empty. Then she started laughing. "He's hiding now," she said. "Let's go check the basement," I suggested. I set up a video camera in our daughter's room and hid the cord behind a dresser so she wouldn't trip on it. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, we saw a pair of little feet. "Hey," I said. The feet ran away from us. Then we heard loud footsteps bounding up the stairs. My wife and I grabbed each other's hands. "Let's get out of here," she whispered. I figured if anything strange happened, I could check the tape later that night. I picked it up and checked the tape. It was full of static. Then I noticed something. In the corner of the screen, I could see a faint figure walking past the camera. Should we go in there? What if there was danger? Then the footsteps slowly made their way to our room. First we heard them in the hallway, then right outside our door. Then they stopped. We waited. A moment, then we heard a knock. It was a sharp, distinct knock. It sounded like someone knocking the end of a wooden hammer against the floor. It was too dark to make out any details, but I could tell that it was a child. But I told her to be strong for the sake of our daughter. who was sleeping soundly in the other room. She never took her wedding ring off, not even when she showered. I looked over at my wife, but she was still asleep. "Daddy, why are you sleeping?" she asked. "It's nighttime," I replied. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart." "But I wanted to play," she said, turning away from me. "Play what?" I asked. "Play with my friends," she answered. I was frightened, but I didn't want my daughter to see that I was scared. "You don't have any friends here," I told her. "Oh, yes, I do," she said. "The girl in the rocking chair, she's my friend. And the boy in the closet, he's my friend, too. They want to play with me." I was shocked. "Don't talk about those things, please," I whispered. "Okay," she said. Then she walked back to her bed and laid down. I told my wife that she must have had a nightmare. I thought it was just my imagination. Then I heard a small voice whispering by the foot of our bed. "Come play with me." My wife and I turned toward the sound, but saw nothing. We started hearing voices more often. They always sounded like a small child. Sometimes we would hear footsteps in the hallway followed by the whisper, "Come play with me." I told my wife to ignore it. "It's just an old house," I said. "Probably just needs to be fixed up a bit. That's all. Maybe you left it at your parents' house," I said. She thought about it. "I guess I did." "It's okay. I'll pick it up tomorrow." And we both stopped speaking. It was an old house in the countryside that had been in my wife's family for many years. Her grandmother passed away there, and so did her grandfather. Then we heard heavy footsteps coming closer to the kitchen. They stopped right outside the door. "Did you hear that?" my wife asked. "Yeah," I replied. "But don't worry, it's probably just an animal or something. Don't read too much into it." But even as I said it, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. We got the house for free, though we had to fix it up a bit. I didn't find anything. So I went back upstairs to check our bedroom. It was. Then I realized that my wife's wedding ring was missing. It wasn't on the table anymore. I told my wife that it was gone, and she looked very frightened. Then she began to cry. It needed a new roof, new paint, and some work on the foundation. But overall, it was a good deal. We got most of our stuff moved in. And then I headed out to Home Depot to get some supplies to start fixing up the place. It was a beautiful day when we moved into our new home. When I returned, I noticed my wife looking out the window with a troubled expression. "What's wrong?" I asked her. Then suddenly we heard loud footsteps bounding up the stairs and down the hall. The following morning, I went to check the attic and basement to see if there were animals in the house. We checked everywhere, but the ring was nowhere to be found. That day, my wife's cousin came over to visit. One night I was woken up by the sound of footsteps. Then one night I woke up to my daughter standing by the foot of our bed. The next morning, my wife and I agreed that we needed to take action. That night, my daughter came running into our room. As we were going downstairs, I could hear my daughter's laughter echoing throughout the house. When we got back to our room, I noticed that the video camera was on the floor and the cord was pulled out of the wall socket. The next night, I set up the camera again, but this time I placed it under the bed. My wife and I were sitting in the living room waiting for our daughter to go to sleep. Then we heard heavy footsteps coming from her room. We started to panic. My wife and I looked at each other in terror. Then the knocking came again. This time it sounded louder. It seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. In the morning after, of course, not sleeping at all, we checked the video camera. The next night, my wife and I decided to stay up and watch the video camera all night. At 3:33 a.m., we heard 3 loud knocks. The following morning, my wife and I were too afraid to check the camera.